Yes, yes, yes.
Ay, ang galing, no? Ganito pala si Zoom.
Kailangan lang yan.
Okay. All right. So we're learning fast. All right. Oops. Ayan. So the first series, which was last week, we had 40 participants. And together with the 40 participants are also people, our staff from the DO who participated in that. So part of that, we got feedback from our school heads. No? Thank you very much for the very kind words and of course the challenges of running a webinar like this. So given that we did it to the school heads this time, we were able to learn how to medyo meet kung ano yung needs ng ating mga participants on the ground. So today we are having Zoom so that we can more or less interact properly. Then, yeah. So there were 3 questions that were asked. The last time. First is, what do you find very different with this type of situation we're encountering this pandemic? And there were 7 themes that came across. One is the disruption of routine work and the description of what you say about what work from home is all about. Of course, lumabas din yung disposition of every person, no, na naiiba din yung mga priorities and then how we feel. And fourth, lumabas din sa inyo yung naiiba yung the way we now express the spiritual experience given that we don't see the place face to face. And number 5, it's also very different to see people, no, yung having yung access to technology, which is widening the gap as well. And number 6, you mentioned about the communication loop wherein naiiba na yung dynamics of communication with parents, yung with your barangay. You know? And the 7th theme that came out was on the role of leaders during crisis. Not only school heads, but also your community leaders. The second question that came out is, what did you do or do differently or doing differently to respond to the situation? So, dalawang themes ang lumabas where technology is a must and then yung adoption of blended learning. Maybe ito yung nakita natin, yung use of all sorts. Whether hard copy or anong klaseng learning yan, ito yung how we are responding and also online technologies. The third is, what is the situation making you realize? So 2 themes came out, prioritizing safety over our work right now. And 2, yung emergence of indigenous cultural practices, no, in our region, no, which we all recognize. And then we proceeded to the new normal, of course, the discussion on VUCA, and our shared understanding of what new normal is, where there is change. This was taken from the context of war, depression, and psychology. And the new normal is emerging situation after loss or grief. And we had 4 lessons from this: the capacity to learn and relearn, the degree of empathy is deepened, and continuing to learn to move forward. And the 4th, those things that we see which were not possible, like technology learning, has become possible right now. So yun yung nasimulan natin sa first discussion. So today, Ma'am Lori, what do we have for today?
Sorry, So for today, wait.
Stop share.
There, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go.
So last time, we were appreciating how we are interacting with the concrete situation we are in, the pandemic, and if we connect it with what we are doing as educators, what we have been talking, let's say, about 21st century, ganyan, the situation of the 21st century, we can say that we are experiencing it intensely with this pandemic. We always talk about preparing our learners for things that they have not encountered in school. We are saying that 21st century is about how our preparation for our learners should be for a world that is different from what is familiar to us, the teachers, for example. And in a way, parang tayo na po ang nasa ganyang sitwasyon ngayon. I mean, whoever thought, di ba, sa totoo lang, whoever thought, any of us, whoever thought that we would live through a time like this, di ba? We never I think, wala po sa atin ang makapagsabi na in our lifetime, nakaranas po tayo ng something like a pandemic. I remember in the last conversation, we were trying to recall, was there any situation, let's say in Baguio or within the environs of the Cordillera that was so sudden and so drastic? The most, I mean, two instances were cited. The 1990 earthquake. So for those who might remember that, the 1990 earthquake was a major disruption and a major crisis, a major moment for those who were in Baguio that time. The other one, more recent, would be the meningococcemia in Baguio. I think it also disrupted the life of Baguio for something like a week or two. Nagsara ang market, mga ganon. But medyo small scale siya. Ito global talaga, and even the numbers alone, di ba? The numbers of those who are sick or those who are dying and who died, it's minsan ang hirap i-absorb. So ito na po yung concrete experience natin of being in a period of something that is not known, or at least known in the sense that we have a sense of comfort. Pero ngayon talagang there are so many things we are not understanding, or we cannot say we are so sure about. So we are experiencing it ourselves, and then let's try to reflect on it from the perspective of educators. Parang kung ang learners po natin haharap ng ganito, or maybe not like this, maybe another uncertain, kasi parang ngayon, okay, we're learning about pandemics. They may face another situation later on that is an unknown also. So how do we prepare them for that? That is what we hope to cover more this time. But to help move into that, can we briefly run through so that our new participants, again, welcome to our new participants. We heard in the intro of Ma'am Soraya about VUCA. So it might help just to briefly review what VUCA is, and let us connect it to the question that was answered by several of you, of the participants last week. Thank you for your responses. So can we please go first? Ano po, balikan lang po natin what is VUCA. So here we are in a situation that is leaving us, many of us, with a sense of parang things are so uncertain, things are so unpredictable. There has been an effort in several circles to try to describe situations like this, and so yun po yung tinatawag na VUCA. So for those who are again new with us, i-share ko lang po yung VUCA briefly, so that we can take part in the continuing discussions. So, dali lang po ha, just getting to, just fixing it a bit.
So meanwhile, pag they want to raise their hands, Haris, they can just raise their hand. Tama? Yeah. Or else, what other ways can they let Miss Lori know that they want to talk? Okay, right.
Sorry. Okay na po, pumasok na po, ano? Sorry.
Yes.
Ba? Okay. Yes. Tama po, ano? It's running? Okay. Sige. So, before us is one of the slides used last week, and it summarizes how we are, or or what happens when we engage a new situation. When we encounter a very new situation, we are, or it demands from us, um, changes. Not only at the individual level, but at a societal level, we are required, or it requires from us engaging this new situation. And in the process, it will result in new changes. These new changes will bring about new results. And when this whole dynamic comes together, we have what is being called the new normal. And as Ma'am Soraya shared earlier, the concept of new normal comes from several fields. But essentially, it is the evolving, the cumulative, uh, it is the accumulation of reactions, actions of uh, people in a group or in a society, leading to a new situation, another a situation, or it can be an accumulation of processes, circumstances coming from how society reacted to the new situation or interacted with the new situation. So the new normal has several characteristics or several features. And again, the features of the new normal have to do with the many questions that are coming before the community or society. So one would be, one feature of the new normal is it is very volatile. The changes are sudden, and then there are a lot of fluctuations. It's not easy to see the trends. That's why the new normal is characterized by volatility. Another feature of the new normal is uncertainty. No? Things are uncertain. You are not sure of the outcomes. There may be several options, pero hindi natin sigurado kung ano ang mangyayari if we take any of those options. The situation is also so complex because it involves many variables, and these are interdependent with each other. Kaya minsan ang hirap niyang pag-isipan. It really challenges any field of specialization. Another feature of the new normal is there are no clear-cut answers. The situation is so multifaceted that it's not like in previous situations where answers are easily available. So ambiguity is there. So these four terms bring about now this acronym called VUCA. No, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now, one question that one point that we are looking at, as I mentioned earlier, is education. Now, what will education be like in a situation that's VUCA? And to bridge our discussion last week to this week, we asked the group several questions. One question, and there were several answers. Again, thank you to those who gave their answers. The question was, in a VUCA world, in a time when VUCA is becoming more and more the trend, VUCA itself is becoming a trend, what would be an important trait of a leader? And thank you again to those who responded. We are linking this now with our understanding of VUCA. So if the situation is volatile, what would be important? What would be important traits? How do we respond to a VUCA situation? Several of you mentioned that a leader needs to be able to have foresight. Someone mentioned about foresight. And then several of you mentioned points related to values and ethics. So if a situation tends to be changing, what is unchanging, sabi ng isa. And ang nakikita po na possible sense of stability in circumstances that are very unstable would be clarity of, or at least meron sense of values and ethics to guide us. And then may nagbanggit din po na sana clear ang capacity for communication. So these traits can be characterized by vision. That at least if there is a sense of vision, in a time of volatility, somehow it helps the group or the community in dealing with volatility. But vision here is not necessarily a clear situation. Rather, what is your basis for doing things? So vision now is not so much ito yung mangyayari na, hindi but rather at least we have a basis. Whatever happens, we have a basis together. Then some of you also shared about, and ito marami ang sumagot, yung being adaptive, the capacity to adapt. Even last week, no? Adaptive po siya. And then, ang isang nababanggit lagi ay about technology. Another one mentioned about being a risk taker. So, kailangan makapag-take ng risk kasi nga, there are several possibilities and we are not sure. So how do we move forward? Somehow, there has to be that willingness to take risks, to try something. You know? Because if there are several possibilities but we are not sure, at least we have to try something. Then several of you, by the way, we can summarize that in terms of understanding. At least we are able to have a certain degree of understanding, not total answers, but at least a way of moving forward. So yun po yung nakikita natin in relation to the sense of uncertainty. Then for complexity, several of you mentioned we need to be able to work with others. We need to have we have to have parang a capacity to work more with others in this kind of situation. And in a complex situation, that is very crucial, our capacity to collaborate, to do problem solving, analysis and synthesis with others, and to, again, communicate it to others, to share it with others. No? It is difficult as it is, but if we are capable, or at least if we try, we do our best to share with others what the understanding is as of the moment, at least it allows people to know that we are learning to clarify what is happening. At least that gives people a sense that we are working on things together, even if things are still uncertain. And then others also said, kailangan may sense of accountability ang leader. Sana may willingness to try new things, innovations. And then there is also the capacity to see trends and patterns. So agility naman po ang tawag dito. So in an ambiguous situation, there is a need for us to develop agility. So these are just some of the features, key features or traits of a leader. And again, parang VUCA din siya. Ano po? So that would be vision, diba? Understanding, clarity, and agility. Now, several of you mentioned a particular term, which siguro I was looking at it. No, this is just an attempt based on the sharing of the previous participants. Mukhang if you put all of this together, it will move into what some of you said, resilience. Kailangan daw ang leader sa ganitong sitwasyon may resilience. Pero when I was now looking at your sharings, parang mas si resilience is now the totality of the four, putting it together. So again, we are seeing this, we are appreciating this based on our own experiences. So in our efforts to respond to a VUCA world, kailangang ma-develop din ang VUCA, but this time as a response, vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. Putting that all together, it seems it will allow us to grow into resilience. Now, let us link that to the question, to our challenge as educators. Parang paano ngayon natin ito itataguyod? How do we cultivate this now among our learners? We are examining this. The question earlier was in terms of leaders because most of you are school heads. Now let's shift the view and ask ourselves, so how now for our learners? And that is the question that we'd like to reflect on together. We sabi nga natin sa mga trainings natin, we talk about 21st century skills for our learners. Basing it now on our experience as leaders, how do we see that now for our learners? So ano pala ang kailangan pag sinabing 21st century skills? So yun po ngayon ang ating point for discussion. May we hear from the group, ano po, our reflections or our thoughts. I-relate natin ngayon po sa 21st century skills. So I guess Sir Harris, paano kaya ito? They would raise first, or I'm sorry, would be they raise and then Sir Harris, you will unmute. Ma'am Sor, I think is sharing something. Sir Harris.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I was being heard. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So random na lang, Ma'am Lori, no? So anyone from the 62 participants, 63, no? Grabe na, no? Marami na yung nag-attend dito ngayon. Ay, 66 na. We welcome, I don't know if nakapasok na din si Assistant Superintendent, Ma'am Florence, no? Almaden, my SLP classmate din. So welcome then from the South. So we are joined by all over na the Philippines. So we ask our participants, anyone can raise their hands, or even ano yung sabi mo, Harris, the reaction there, no? Ayan, okay. So anyone from the group? Again, Ma'am Lori, yung tanong natin is, ano yung mga...
if we are to cultivate 21st century skills among our learners, ano po, how now do we do that given our experience, or how now do we understand 21st century skills given our experience now? Can we share our reflections?
Okay.
Anyone?
Nakikita ko si Nixon. O i-mute mo na yan, Nixon. Harris? Ayan. Okay, sige.
Yes, sir.
Wait. Nag-raise ba ako ng hand?
Parang raise yung hand na nakita ko.
Okay, anyway. So, since we are speaking of what we call this one, the 21st century, and yung tanong po ni Ma'am is, paano natin, or how are we going to cope with that, or how are we going to do that, something like that, considering the situation that we are in now. Now, since one of the 21st century skills is on technology, if I'm not mistaken, it would not be that so difficult on our part as educators, most especially that we have been in trainings for so many times already. So I don't think it is that difficult. What is important now is how these children or the learners as well as the parents would adapt to this kind of situation. For educators, I think there's hindi siya masyadong problema, as long as yung sabi nga natin, as long as we should be adaptive in that sense.
So the familiarity with the technology is a critical dimension, if I understand correctly, sir. And
yes,
yes, and since educators are more and more being exposed, in that sense, it is not difficult because the exposure, I mean, there's an ongoing exposure to technology. But you did mention that our learners and parents, not just the learners even, and yes, parents will have to also be introduced to this, and probably the challenge will be that side. Ano po?
Yes,
there may be challenges on that side. Okay.
Yung sinabi ni Nixon. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. But I go back to the question last session. when we
Ay, ako, nawala si ma'am. Ma'am?
talk of technological skills, sabi ni Nixon, we might not have a problem with school heads, teachers, but how about our the support that we should be providing our learners? And this is one problem we are facing now with those who failed. There are some parents who are willing for their children to undergo online remediation class, but they don't have the technological capacity. So maybe that's one thing that the school and the department as a whole should look into.
So the technology, the learning of the technology is one thing, but the provision of the hardware, and all
Support,
is
the support
yes,
system.
yes. No? So that is one challenge we are seeing now. I think one of the things we are concretely experiencing is how far have we really been able to provide the support system. Yan ang nakikita natin ngayon. Ano po? Just the situation of the final grades, di po ba? Medyo nahirapan din tayo. So that already tells us the limitation of support system so far. Anyone else? So again, we are looking at if we are since one of our goals in education is developing 21st century skills among our learners. What is this experience now telling us in terms of that goal? No, I mean, what will 21st century skills really mean for our learners, given our experience po?
Yes, si Ma'am Kinyo. Go ahead, Ma'am Kinyo.
Okay.
We're
Good
here.
morning. For me, I think it is collaboration. Collaboration in the sense that we should be diligent in the testing because we are dealing with our learners. So there should be collaboration with the Department of Health. We should be provided with testing kits so that we will do the testing and we should be diligent about it. We should also intensify these practices that we are doing this, but it is not so serious. The practices on social distancing, hand washing, eating nutritious food, which we are teaching to our children. So
Yes.
this should be our response to help our government, and then we should also have a ready policy so that this policy will help us to the new normal for our transition period.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
thank you, ma'am. So if I understand correctly, you've raised three things. No, one is the importance now of collaboration, given that the pandemic is health in nature. The intensity of working with, let's say, DOH is crucial. So, in other words, in uncertain situation or in a VUCA world, our quickness or our capacity to collaborate needs to be very strong, and we
Yes.
have to do it with appropriate groups. So in a way, that's what you're mentioning. And then I'd like to pick up on what you mentioned, ma'am, that this is a time when it seems we need to reinforce and strengthen our messages regarding health. Ano po, you mentioned about nutrition. So in other words, a major theme of education now, tama po ba? Parang a major theme of education now should be health related. So
Health related.
while we have so many subjects, while we have so many topics we want to cover, in this kind of situation, highlighting the aspect of health, if I understand correctly po, coming from you, is crucial to be responsive to the situation. Tama po ba?
Yes, ma'am. And my concern is parents also should be educated, but who will do
Yan.
that? They should be
Yes.
educated because they are the ones preparing the food of their children. They are the ones who are bathing their children. So our part is to mag-jive ba ang sinasabi ng school sa ginagawa ng parents.
Yan po. So now we are seeing that in a way, our role now is not just with our learners directly, which is what happens in the usual school setting. in
Yes,
the
ma'am.
present context, education now has to include the parents, has to include the other adults in the community. So parang ang audience na po ng education, hindi lang yung ating learners, no? Na-expand
Yes,
na
also
yung
the
ating,
society.
yes,
Mm.
okay. So this is po critical insight, especially at these times. Kumbaga po, yung education mandate na natin ngayon, hindi na lang, it's already expanded. Tama po ba?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Mm.
so that is a good point to reflect on po for all of us. Ano po, parang ano pala ang mandato ng edukasyon ngayon sa isang sitwasyon
Yeah.
na hindi
So we
lang
need
learners
the
natin ang apektado, rather
So we need the
families
other
already.
agencies to do that.
Yes, no? It's families and communities affected. So what is now the education mandate being called to do something like that? Thank you. But
Yes,
then you
ma'am.
mentioned transition. So even now, we already have to prepare for how to transition to what is
Yes.
it coming, what will come, no, after. So that is also another point. May any
Yeah.
others want to relate to the points raised so far? Yes, ma'am. Ma'am Yolanda. Oh, this is really interesting to see this in Zoom.
Oo nga eh. Ako din. Walang namabangha din ako. Okay.
Of course, I'm just wondering because of course, I have a limited view. I wonder if there are others. Yes, Ma'am Yolanda. Yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to share by citing a concrete example. If we have the current, no ma'am, ito yung kuryente.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am. So if this is
Stronger po.
the
Sorry, ma'am. Stronger po. Ayun.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Kunwari yung dalawang kuryente, no po. Kung i-connect po natin yan, di po ba may flow ng electricity po yan?
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am. So if these two connections will connect each other, meron pong flow of connectivity. Ano po yung ibig sabihin nun, ma'am? So if we are here and this is our learner and we connect each other, there should be a connectivity. How are we going to do it? Hindi lang po through technology. Okay, sabihin natin meron silang technology to connect with us. Pero tayo as teachers, kailangan po natin silang turuan. So it speaks to values, ano? So hindi lang po technology na puro sila laro. Yes, they are very happy na, yes, technology na tayo. Pwede na tayong mag-online. Pero how far do we know na sila ay sumusunod sa atin through technology? Ano po? So we have to tell them also na if it is time for them to learn online, we have to set rules na it's time for online, nandun sila, na hindi sila gumagawa ng other things. You know, ang mga kabataan ngayon, they're very fan of while doing things like this. So they are multitasking. Yes, we all know they are multitasking. Magaling sila. Na habang nakikinig sila sa atin, may iba pala silang ginagawa.
Okay.
So yung ano natin is, yung connection ba natin, ma'am, is firm. There should be a strong connectivity between us as teachers to our learners.
Okay.
Connection po doon. Hindi natin puputulin yun. We have to follow them up para yung daloy tuloy-tuloy po. Kahit po na mayroon tayong ganitong situation, there's still communication. That's the connectivity that we are going to
Okay.
in their minds. Thank you po.
Thank you, ma'am. So you were stressing the importance of connectivity, connection, that even if there are disruptions, kailangan we find ways to still have that connection, and how we also inculcate in them their capacity to connect with us in as much as we are doing our best to connect with them. Technology is not an assurance that the connectivity is there, no? That's what you're highlighting. So that capacity for connectivity is crucial. And you were mentioning that somehow providing some structure like schedules, when will we be online together, something like that, ma'am? You were mentioning, if I understand correctly. But what I mean here by structure is not something fixed, but rather may rhythm ba? Kumbaga, magulo na nga lahat, pero somehow there has to be something that helps them feel that there is that connection. So one way to do that is there has to be like a structure of schedules when we will interact, when we will have a conversation. And communication, sabi nyo, has to be there. It has to, siya yung magpapadaloy pa rin. Ano po? To keep the connectivity together. Okay, thank you. We also see, just to share briefly on the side, on the chat, in the chat box, others are sharing about reiterating what was shared earlier about problem solving, being critical thinkers, being creative, and then we talk also about cooperation. Communication keeps coming up, interpersonal skills. Any others? Baka meron pa pong mag-raise. Information. They grasp you. Okay, if I may continue, others have shared here again in the chat about more specific indicators like how do we grasp information, how do we deal with information, how do we look at social media and process the information that is there. We are seeing right now, di ba, ang daming fake news, tapos mga misinterpretations, etc. And sometimes it makes the crisis, it heightens the crisis instead of helping to clarify things. The need for sincerity. Kailangan po yung there is a need to lead with a heart and make a difference. Any others? Another entry here as we wait for others who may want to share. May nagbanggit po ng relevance. And in a way, this is related to what Ma'am Quino mentioned. No? How do we make education relevant to those learners? So again, no, in the midst of a pandemic, if we are able to see the importance of health and maybe re-emphasizing the importance of health in our lives, this is one way to make education relevant. I'm not sure, ano po, this may touch some of us, or maybe Baguio is not as severely hit po kasi the way it is here in Manila and in some areas of the country. But speaking of relevance, for example, no, how do we handle if just in case we have a family member who is affected by the virus, di ba? That kind of information is still something that needs to reach a lot of households. Baka ang mas nandyan pa is fear and panic, no? But if we are to, if one relevant information everybody, each household ideally should have is, yun nga, di ba? How do we handle, how will we care for our family member just in case na-infect siya? So that kind of information is important, and as shared earlier, probably tayo as educators can contribute so that the sense of being VUCA will be the other type of VUCA, ano po, some degree of clarity, some degree of handling the complexity. Anyone else po? Any other points that we are raising? O mukhang mas comfortable ang marami yata dito sa chat. Ganun po ba? Sige. Here, we are others coming in. We have, how can we sustain productive learning through online? Ayan, this has to do naman po with the challenges of the learning process given what is available of online, offline, hindi naman lahat, may internet. We have another one on optimism. So it's more a disposition, being optimistic as we deal with our stakeholders. How do we strengthen our actions? Let's see. Learning being a continuous process. We have been mentioning that also last last week pa po, ano na, ongoing, parang learning is ongoing. We may not be in school now, but learning has to continue wherever we are. Yan. Meron pa po kaya sa ating mga kasamahan? Yan, lumalabas po uli si resilience. Okay. Sige po. So, okay, given what you have shared so far, let us recall how we are framing 21st century. And as I was trying to look into some of the materials that we use in DepEd, I felt there was one slide that can hopefully kind of not really summarize, but help us to organize our thoughts. Ano po? So if I may just share this one slide, which may be familiar to some of us, especially for those of us who have attended our trainings, lalo na po sa senior high. This is one slide that is being used in some of our workshops, probably, or trainings. How do we categorize the 21st century skills? So we have ways of thinking, ways of working, tools for working, and then skills for living in the world. So if we look at what we have shared so far, I think we can see that several of them will fall in one of the four. Definitely, we have to harness particular ways of thinking. Again, it's not, if we notice, it's not really about having it's not so much about being so good at a certain expertise, but rather the process, skills that are ways of thinking that guide us as we go through processes, or how we engage the moment, how we engage circumstances. In terms of ways of working, very strong po ang communication and collaboration. So it seems in these kinds of situations in a VUCA world, again, how we understand together, how we communicate that understanding, no? Very crucial. The tools for working, the technology, of course, is there. And then, interestingly, information literacy is here. This morning, someone shared about information literacy. No? It's a set of skills that have to do with how we digest information, how we communicate, how we reflect. So it's not really just a simple set of skills, but when we talk of reflection, di ba? When we talk of processing information, malaking set of skills ito. Then living in the world, social responsibility, citizenship. So the social skills are very crucial as well. The interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills are very crucial. So again, if we look at all of these and relate it to our concrete experience with this pandemic, we appreciate now 21st century skills to be more of how we interact really with the situations we are encountering. It is, again, not so much about developing developing just a particular expertise, but rather mismong on the ground, in the moment, interaction with situations. Yes, Ma'am Sor.
I'm curious about learning more about what you said, not developing an expertise, but looking more about how we respond to the situation. Tama ba yun? Did I get that right?
Yes. Parang expertise is of course important, but it's not like before, kasi talagang you have to grow into a particular specialization eh. Parang ganon. Ngayon, not necessarily that way, but how will that now interact with the rest of the world? How will that now adapt? Parang what you know now may not be as parang what you know now is not enough in relation to the new situation you're encountering. So how do we deal with that now? No, something like that.
Yan. It is quite interesting kasi syempre what we are learning, what we hear, no, is like about developing a certain expertise and then we move on from that. But the second portion of what you mentioned in that statement is something really that challenges us then, no? Yung one of the 21 lessons of the 21st century by si Yuval Harari, which I mentioned one time, no, which is very crucial that I see now, which sa tingin ko lang etong one lesson that he mentioned in the 21 lessons for the 21st century, which is on meditation. That actually captures the entire book. Parang sa lahat ng mga lessons ng 21st century skills, meditation is a skill that each one of us should have. So I was trying to relate it to what you said na it's not only about an expertise but yung response mo din and how you relate it. So I think that helps a lot na isa sa mga skills in the 21st century, which I don't know in that framework where it will fall.
Yes, good point. I was also trying to look at VUCA, and when several of you raised about resilience, parang resilience will not fall in any of the four. Rather, it's what happens to a person when you're able to cultivate the capacity for vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. So the disposition really is crucial. Resilience is a disposition. It's how you are in the midst of the crisis. It's how you're able to carry yourself and how you're able to communicate that to others, how you're able to get others also to have a hold of themselves so that we can go through this together. And as Ma'am Sir was mentioning, the meditative practice allows us to always, I use the term of, what's that earlier, yung connection. The inner connection is perhaps one way for us to maintain the outer connections. Because if we lose a hold of our connection to ourselves, then it may be difficult. No, most likely it will be difficult for us to keep the connection with others also. So that kind of interaction is so crucial now. No? The inner ourselves in relation to the outer. So whatever it is that we have, whether it's an expertise, our skills, our talents, no, yung inner dynamic nito sa atin and how we're going to interact with that wider reality we are encountering, which may be new, diba? Which may be new, but the importance really of seeing the interconnections of things from me to the outside, and then the different events happening, the information. Kaya si 21st century po, siguro ang isang nagiging challenge din for us would be how to appreciate really all these as a whole. That they're not just discrete skills we are sharing to our learners, but how do they interact together when we are facing now concrete situations. Yan, patuloy po talaga ang chat. Mukhang we are really more. Though we would like to invite others, baka may iba pa pong mag-raise ng hands to share. Please unmute yourselves. We continue here, no, lumalabas po values formation, highlighting the importance in the 21st century. Innovative minds, important in an interconnected global world. Speaking po of global, I was just wondering, sige nga po, para naman makapag-share ang iba, this is I think one of the rare experiences for us where we are forced by circumstances to look at global statistics and to really listen what's happening to Italy, and the numbers really can be a little can cause anxiety. Pero ang reality, wala tayong choice eh. We have to face the global anxiety. And maybe for quite a number of us, this is the first time that we are forced for several days to face the global situation. Kumusta po? How do we feel about that? Parang dati hindi naman kailangan ganyan na matutukan lagi yung global and then see it in the local. How do we feel about this situation? Na we have to really see the global and the local together almost every day. Ano pong pakiramdam natin? How are we interacting with that? Might anyone want to share? Or how do we feel given that?
Hi, ma'am. May I come in?
That's Jovi. Go ahead, Jovi.
Yes,
Go
ma'am.
ahead.
Talking about the global, ma'am, as we see the news and as we see the tremendous increase of cases in the other countries, especially for a developed country like the US, the UK,
Yes, yes.
we now start to appreciate the values that we manifest in the Philippines because the Bayanihan spirit in Baguio in the Philippines is alive. Compared to a very developed country like the US and the UK, the support system of the community in the government is lesser in not even seen in the news compared to us in the Philippines. I say yes, ma'am. I say this because I have sisters in the UK working as a nurse, and they shared that they are not even allowed to wear mask in the hospital unless they are infected by the disease.
Really, ma'am? That's
Yes, which is a very sad news compared to us here, where we see the support of all walks of life, donating PPEs, food packs. But when you see their status, they are not that very rich people. They belong to the middle class, yet they go out of their way to do their part in sharing what they have. Compared in the US and in the UK, na kanya-kanya lang ang buhay, walang pakialam sa kapitbahay. That's now I see that we appreciate now the values of being a Filipino. And we also see the effort of our leaders, from the president down to the barangay captains, the volunteers who are all in the streets doing their part, when in other countries, ang nagtatrabaho lang talaga mga frontliners na mga ano. That's my view of how I compare the global to the local in terms of the guidelines, the coming of guidelines, in terms of the guidelines set by the government.
Okay.
Yes.
So we appreciate now the variations of how peoples and cultures are interacting with the situation. We see things that we can appreciate in the way we're handling the situation, in as much as also we see how other countries are handling their situation, that we can also probably adapt. Ano po, parang it becomes a learning process pa rin. We and then ang maganda sa learning process, yun nga, as you mentioned, ma'am, there are things about how we are and how we do things that we reappreciate more.
Yes.
And you mentioned po the difference in the degree of how we have our sense of community, perhaps, or how we express our sense of community. We may relate it again to our capacity to collaborate and to connect with each other, which perhaps is can become a strength. In some circumstances, it can be a strength, like in this pandemic, support each other. And that can be a way of that perhaps that characteristic for us, that sense of community, can be a strong source of support for all of us as we go through this. Ano po? Kaysa sa isang community where they may have a different way, no? Their way of expressing community may be different. And in this kind of situation, it may not be that effective. I mean, baka yung ganitong klaseng situation may need a different kind of interaction, which may not be their strength, ano? But nagkataon strength natin. So, yan, we see that this situation helps us to compare and contrast, at the same time see what we can learn from others and to reappreciate what we have. Ano po? That's one of the things that is happening. How about for the others po, in terms of dealing with the numbers? I mean, how do we interact with the anxiety that sometimes the numbers can cause? How do we feel ourselves, no, when we see ganito na, how many, ilan na ang namatay globally? We're already past the, if I'm not mistaken, we're already past the
100,000.
Yeah, we're already past
100,000.
500,000 na yata plus, no?
Yes.
Remember correctly. How are we interacting with that? Tapos still as the days go on, pataas ng pataas pa rin yung number of infections po.
Sorry, I thought
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
it's Ma'am Kinyo. It gives me balance yung comparison ng global with local situation. First, this pandemic started outside the Philippines, right? Particularly in China. So we have to use also the global trend as a basis to compare how we are going through the curve, yung sinasabi nilang curve na yan. Oo. So, well, on one hand, it might cause panic because of the enormous number of deaths recorded globally. But on the other hand, it gives you comfort also that locally we are not so we are not incurring that much deaths. So may sense of comfort din siya na okay, we are going through the same curve as the other countries or globally, but we are not incurring that much deaths. However, for local consumption also for the city of Baguio, it also pays to know the statistics, no? Because especially if the ECQ will be lifted, you would know kung ano ba talaga yung phenomenon, saan ba yung nagfa-flatten ng curve, what are we doing the right thing for the ECQ, are we doing it effectively? So yung study na pinost ni Ma'am Soraya about from UP, the analysis is for some areas to extend ECQ and for others. Yun yung nagbibigay sa atin ng hope na somehow maybe after the flattened curve, we can have already the lifting of the ECQ for other areas. However, for Benguet, it was darkly colored, so apparently there will still be an extension of the ECQ.
Thank you, ma'am. Picking up from what you mentioned, we see the importance of the willingness to face the anxiety and to face the numbers. I mean, we cannot hide much as it is bad news in a way, but if we are to have clarity of hope, we have to know the data, and we have to be willing to embrace the anxiety that goes with knowing the data. And that capacity to embrace anxiety, as you mentioned, it's very interesting, ma'am, the way you put it. No, there is that, not really fear. It's more of anxiety, pero critical siya. Para nga nakikita natin kung kumusta yung hope. So it looks like they go together. We cannot just be hopeful without really a clarity of the reality. And it will really mean we have to face the numbers in this case. We have to embrace that anxiety and yet not be lost in it so that we can see the hope. Ano po? And again, we connect that to what several of you mentioned about resilience, because embracing anxiety means you're able to sit through the anxiety. You're able to hold it. You don't get taken by it. You're able to hold it while we are moving towards a more hopeful situation. And in a way, I guess, as a segue of sorts, I hope we can keep that in mind in relation to the next sharing that will happen later, because that capacity to hold the anxiety and let it guide us as we welcome what will the hope, no, the better situation that will definitely come. It will definitely come, pero hindi lang natin alam how long it will take, but definitely it will come. I think it is related to the next sharing later, no, that you will be having on mental health. And then now let us slowly wrap up and relate this again to our learners. Kasi yun nga po, we as most of you are school heads, you have shared a lot already in terms of ano sana ang nasa isang leader, ano sana ang makultivate natin sa learners natin. These words now that we are sharing hopefully become more concrete and more alive because we know now more deeply what they mean. Sometimes these can just be words, or the depth of the meaning of these words can escape us unless we experience a situation that makes us reflect on these words more deeply, because it is demanded of us in the very situation we are in. We have a better appreciation now when we talk of connectivity, of collaboration, of innovation, of critical thinking, because of the very experience we are going through. And hopefully, because we now understand these words more deeply in an experiential way, because of what we are going and because of what we're undergoing and engaging, hopefully it will allow us now to cultivate it and inculcate it to our learners also in a more meaningful way. So let us hold and remember our deeper understanding of these terms now because of the experience we are undergoing. And I'd like to emphasize undergoing po kasi we will still really go through this still. So let us, like, now that we ourselves, parang this 21st century skills, hinihingi na ito mismo sa atin. And as we are trying to cultivate it in us, let us experience it well, because that is the very process that we hope to inculcate with our learners. And the only way we can do that with our learners is if we ourselves go through the process of deepening it in ourselves. So let us hold that po, and hopefully we grow together through this experience, recognizing and remembering po that things will really get better for sure. We just do not know when, we just do not know exactly how, pero we know that change will come, no? That the new normal, or we will go through this, we will recover from this. Pero yun, panghawakan po natin yon, and let us hold these experiences together so we can understand what we mean by 21st century in a really concrete and meaningful way. Then we can share it better to our learners. I hope that helps to wrap up our sharing together. Maraming salamat po sa mga nagbahagi, both with us verbally and at the same time on chatting with us also. And even as others may not have been able to share explicitly, I hope that the interaction allowed us to bring with us. No, hopefully it will allow us to hopefully we will bring with us the ongoing conversation, and that we cultivate the continuing learning that is demanded from us, ano po, both as educators, and I guess in a way, parang naging 21st century learners na rin po tayo, given the circumstances. So again, thank you po to everyone.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Lori. No, your share, the interaction today is it got deeper, reflecting on 21st century skills and how it relates to all of us. So maganda yung challenge na iniwan mo, like the challenge to continue this conversation. Kasi it's not the usual, the learning process that we have today is not the usual DepEd stuff of, doing how to do a technical report, what to pass today, tomorrow, and so on. But it was the way we are looking at this is more of an inner journey, ba? Which allowed us to parang deepen our understanding of ourselves in this time of crisis, how we are processing it more, no? And more of what you said in the last part about what can we now do to prepare ourselves to respond, no, to whatever VUCA situation we are hit with. So we are very, very happy no, that we have the participants here, ito mga frontline din natin, mga school heads, no, na who are looking forward to the opening of classes. And maganda nga na today no, we were able to open up some of this etong ngang conversation na ito, and they brought up how they operationalize 21st century skills. It's not the one coming from DepEd, no, but they were able to define it. What 21st century skills, tama ba yun? Tama?
Yes.
Would they be looking at with their learners, their teachers, and also themselves? So I was able to pick up four themes na from all of the discussion today. Una, from how our school head participants operationalize 21st century skills needed, no, is yung deeper collaboration with stakeholders, no. Even from learners, kailangan din yan. They have to learn how to collaborate, which is more than teamwork, right? Kasi si teamwork is bringing individual reports together, and that's coming up with one report. But deeper collaboration means being integrative, no? Like integrating everything that has been reported, and what now can we do from here? What's all about? So yun yung result ng collaboration. So that's one. And the second is yung role of education is not only for the learners, but also we are now moving beyond the classroom, which is now the role of education to also the parents. The third is on inner connection, which is the key to processing outer connection. And the fourth, facing numbers, facing the data, and at the same time embracing anxiety, which is an offshoot of what we see from all of this data. So I hope that I got all of this right from what we've shared today. So tama po ba yun, Ma'am Lori?
Yes, Ma'am Sor, thank you so much. Again, thank you to everyone for allowing our conversation to be fruitful for everyone. And it's really an ongoing process. I myself, just listening and conversing with you, it also reinforces myself. I mean, I have to also make sure that I am conscious of how we go through this together. My contribution as we go through this together.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Lori, and we acknowledge all of your participation in the group chat as well, no? And what else? Sino pa? As of now, we have 76, tama ba? 76, no, ang number na nag-attend in your session, Ma'am Lori. Maraming salamat. We are going on a break. That's about Jovi, and ilang oras yun?
5 minutes. 5 minutes lang.
5 minutes lang break.
5 minutes
and then
break.
we have the second session with Ma'am Criza, Ma'am Criza Hernandez Cito of St. Louis University to continue this conversation and dig deeper into the psychological world, help us in maintaining our mental health. So good morning to one and all. Jovi will now take on in the next session.
Yes,
thank you.
So
and thank you, Ma'am Anna Marie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
And Ma'am Florence.